The Allied intelligence communities came up with an absolutely devious plan to prepare for the invasion of Normandy in World War II. It's a story hardly anyone ever mentions, and we'll tell you all about it on a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True. Hey there, and welcome back to the show where every week we learn something that sounds made up. It's really true. Part of the WCBE podcast experience and available on all podcast platforms. Also on the NPR app and website. My name is Michael Kent. Hello. And this is episode 221. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks for tuning in every week. I've got a story for you this week I think you've probably never heard. I love reading books and watching documentaries about World War II, and I've never seen this plan mentioned in any of them. Also, we've got Jay Black, a podcast regular, joining us later in the show. He's once again joining us from a cruise ship at sea, so stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode about the smashed guitar in the movies. I heard from my friend Ryan, who owns Ryan Fowler's Guitar Experience in Towson, Maryland. He knew about this story. He told me that while everyone called the Martin guitar in the story priceless, those who were in the guitar world sort of knew that it was overblown and probably only worth a few $1,000s. Definitely an interesting take, and one that Kurt Russell seems to agree with, because in one interview, it seems like he implies that the value was inflated to make the story more interesting. Every time someone told the story, the guitar was worth more and more. It's a crappy thing to do to him, the person who actually smashed it. But I love learning new information about our story, so I greatly appreciate that feedback. If you want to continue the conversations about the episodes you learn about here, you can do that on the Patreon community. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. It's a great way to give back and support this show. That helps me keep the lights on and the bills paid. When you become a Tizitor on Patreon, you get bonus stuff like videos, ad-free episodes, and more. You can join at patreon.com/Michael Kent.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
We also still only have a 4.9 rating on the Apple Podcasts app. That's the purple icon app, and the only place where reviews and ratings seem to matter. So go over there, give us a 5-star rating along with a few words. That helps a ton. We've got a couple new ones. Anne says, quote, "Interesting podcast." And someone else who is anonymous wrote, "This is a great show that you can't help but learn something new every week. I never miss an episode." Thank you so much to the people who wrote those. Those reviews are so appreciated. Please keep them coming and leave your review.
I was thinking of giving this place 5 stars.
And finally, this is a reminder to get your Tizit merch. We've got a t-shirt and 2 different types of mugs on the website, theinternetsaysitstrue.com. Just click merch and you can find those. And if you're a Tizitor on Patreon, you get a discount. So now we're going to go back to a story about World War II. But before we do that, let's look at some things that have happened more recently. A major part of war is intelligence gathering, and this falls into a few different categories. One of them is signals intelligence. This is the stuff you think of when you think of military intelligence. It includes monitoring radio, internet, and telephone traffic, intercepting text messages, online chatter, things like that. But it also includes decrypting official military communications from other militaries and tracking vehicle movements and radar signatures. But that's not all there is to the intelligence world. There's also reconnaissance and surveillance, and this is usually the type of intelligence gathering that includes aerial photos from spy planes, drones, and satellites, but it could just as easily include photographs from the ground. An offshoot of this is geographic and environmental intelligence, which is mapping out terrain and soil types, but also includes weather patterns, tides, and vegetation. And then there's human intelligence. And this is basically what we refer to as spies, but also could include getting intel from civilians or captured enemy combatants. And finally, there's open source intelligence. This is using available public information in order to inform our military of what they need to know before going into an area. For instance, checking newspapers, public photographs, and social media, as well as monitoring the movement of civilians. All of these things are used together in order to learn about your adversaries, and we're seeing it in real time with a couple current conflicts. The ones I really want to focus on are the combination of human intelligence and open source intelligence, because social media has caused a confluence of these two things. People put personal stuff online and that information becomes public. Our current military members are trained to be aware of the things they put online for this very reason. Each branch has their own training protocol, and they all revolve around protecting sensitive information like locations, names, military equipment, and movements. In the current conflict between Russia and Ukraine, open source intelligence analysts and government agencies have used satellite images, social media photos and videos to track Russian troop movements and equipment locations. The Ukrainian government and allied groups have leveraged geotagged social media photos to pinpoint and target Russian positions. And this not only helps Ukraine learn about troop positions, but also the types of equipment in those locations. This was especially true during the 2014 invasion of Crimea, when important intel was leaked to Ukraine because Russian soldiers had shared photos and videos without turning off their location services on their phones. In the Syrian civil war, governments used social media photos and videos to track the online activities of ISIS recruits and sympathizers. These materials often revealed locations and plans. And there's also the case of photos and videos uploaded by activists and civilians being used to verify the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Well, today's story is about the use of human and open source intelligence during World War II, long before social media, and it was actually supplied by the public. We'll talk about it after a quick break. There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsayitstrue.com/deals for the link.
Hey, I'm Cliff Baumgardner.
And I'm Harrison Stewart.
If you're like us, you probably grew up watching the Discovery Channel classic, Mythbusters.
From rocket cars to chicken cannons, Mythbusters proved there's no question too big, too small, or too ridiculous to put to the test.
Now we're going back to rewatch the show from episode 1, and we want you to follow along. Join us as we revisit every single myth, moment, experiment, and explosion from throughout the show's legendary 14 seasons. Subscribe now so you don't miss one.
If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent.
In the early dawn of D-Day, June 6, 1944, the largest battle armada in history heads across 80 miles of rough channel water from England to the northern coast of France. Barrage balloons and a massive concentration of air and surface guns.
In World War II, the Allies were suffering heavy losses for the first couple years of the war, and it wasn't looking good. Things started turning in early 1943. The German forces had suffered horrible losses on the Eastern Front, and Mussolini's government collapsed in Italy. The Allied invasion of France, known during the planning as its secret code name Operation Overlord, was starting to be planned early in 1943, and it really required a huge effort by the Allied intelligence agencies. These would have been Britain's MI6 and the American OSS, which was sort of a precursor to the CIA. Now, there were other smaller agencies and groups involved, but these were the two main agencies responsible for gathering intelligence and planning the invasion, which we now know as D-Day, or the invasion of Normandy. This happened in June of 1944. Normandy was chosen as the location because of its strategic location and weaker German defenses, and part of this intelligence was creating an entire web of deception to trick the Germans into thinking we were landing somewhere else. If you want to know more about that, research Operation Bodyguard, which is a crazy story and one way too detailed to get into here. It could be its own episode in the future maybe, but it's been covered by so many other people. Just look into it. It's a pretty crazy story, Operation Bodyguard. But before this huge amphibious assault, which was the largest ever in history, could take place, the armies and navies and the Air Force, they needed to know as much as they could about the terrain of the landing site. Think about it. If a bunch of Americans or British started showing up and surveying the ground in Germany-occupied France, it would send off all sorts of red flags that maybe this would be the landing location. So how did they get all of their intel without putting actual boots on the ground? Well, they needed to know the layout of the land. They needed to know the soil and sand density, the tide tables, and where the ideal locations for German fortifications would possibly be. This is where we come back to the different types of intelligence gathering we discussed before the break. Aerial photography was used extensively by the Royal Air Force and the United States Army Air Forces. Covert agencies worked with the French resistance fighters to gain intel on the ground, like supply lines, German troop movements, and weak points in their defenses. Allied submarines patrolled the coastline from a distance, and divers were able to gather soil samples. But a huge, and I mean huge, effort was made through a diabolical plot. They wanted photographs. The pictures they collected from tourist guidebooks and pre-war maps were great, but they only showed so much. In order to piece together a complete picture of the beaches, MI6 and the Allied naval forces turned to BBC. In March of 1942, this effort had already started, before the official planning of the Normandy invasion had even begun. Director of British Naval Intelligence Admiral John Godfrey had gone on BBC and asked for people to send in their photographs and postcards of Europe that they had taken on vacation. Of particular importance to the Navy were pictures taken on Europe's beaches, from the Pyrenees in the west to Norway in the east. They didn't ask for photos from specific particular locations, but just asked for their beach photos and where they were taken. And the entire thing was framed as a photo contest. Hundreds of thousands of entries were immediately mailed in. They were photos of landscapes, photos of a toddler sitting on the beach, photos of a couple kissing next to a stream, and postcards they'd collected on their holiday vacations in the past. By 1944, more than 10 million photographs had been collected and analyzed. They would look at the photo of the toddler and be able to see in the background how the beach sloped and dropped off into the ocean behind him, or how the foliage hid the road behind the photo of the couple kissing. These photos were used extensively during the planning of Operation Overlord, and map and 3D model makers used them to determine exactly where the Allied forces would be able to focus and where paratroopers would need to land. It was an ingenious combination of open source and human intelligence that absolutely helped guide the successful invasion of Normandy's beaches on D-Day. It was a deadly day, don't get me wrong. D-Day was deadly, with over 10,000 Allied casualties, including more than 4,000 deaths, as troops faced fierce German resistance, fortified defenses, and rough conditions on the beaches of Normandy. It was a huge success because meticulous planning, overwhelming Allied air and naval support, and the sheer determination of the soldiers overwhelmed Germany's defenses, securing a vital foothold in Europe and marking the beginning of Nazi Germany's defeat. Those millions of photos that were sent in to the BBC by just civilians marked a huge civilian effort in the landing. It was a 1940s version of Ukraine troops searching through geo-located Instagram photos, and it was all free and cost the Allies no dangerous spy missions. World War II was won with a combined 50 million soldiers in the Allied forces, but supporting those forces were the civilians of those nations. They helped by joining resistance movements in Europe. They manufactured warfighting equipments at production rates that the world had never seen. They raised money, war bonds, and took part in rationing. And by supplying their old vacation photos, their direct contributions to the intelligence gathering was absolutely invaluable in helping the Allies win the war. The internet says it's true. It is time for Yap Yap with me and a friend. Today I'm calling our good friend Jay Black. Jay's been on the podcast probably more than just about anyone, and that's because he's so dang good at it. And
very nice.
Just like before, you're on a cruise ship. The last 3 times I've talked to you, you've been on a cruise ship. Jay is a professional stand-up comedian. That's what he does for a living. He used to be an English teacher and was able to leave that career in order to do this. And has it been 20 years yet since you've been a full-time stand-up comedian?
So this 31st of January will be 18 years.
18.
My comedy career could vote if it
That's
wanted
amazing, dude. That's congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you much. Yeah.
And we bonded over doing college shows together and the misery that can be involved with that sometimes. And anyway, where are you sailing to this time?
We just left the Panama Canal.
Ooh.
And we are on our way. I'm looking now towards Harvest Bay, Belize, Mexico, or Belize.
Exciting.
I don't know how to pronounce it. But it is exciting if you're a person who's on the cruise willingly. I am stuck in I'm in a bilge. I'm in the bilge water, waiting for this to be over. But you can't turn down the money, Mike. You can't turn down the money.
You can't. And the Panama Canal is one of those things that you can show the video to people and say, hey, look, I did this. And there are a lot of people who that's like a bucket list thing for them. And even though you're working, it's still cool to talk about later.
It is kind of neat. Although the Panama Canal has the same experience I had on my honeymoon, which is, wow, I thought it'd be bigger.
Ooh, yeah. I haven't done that yet. But I've seen the videos where like you look out the window of your cabin and it's like, oh, there's a wall 6 inches away.
You have
crazy.
literally like 6 inches on either side. They asked us if anybody had extra butter so that we could get through this thing. So.
That's crazy. Let's get right into it. Do you happen to have a fact that you think there's little chance that I would know?
A fact that I think you would have little chance that you would know. Let me come up with one while we're talking, and I'll give it to you. All right.
Okay,
I didn't have it off the top of my head.
No worries. We'll get back to it. Let's get into this first one. We're playing for a joke. So if you get it wrong, Jay, you got to tell me a joke. And if you get it right, I will tell you one. Couldn't find a joke this week, and so I got out my handy dandy Friars Club Encyclopedia of Horrible Jokes, and we're going to choose one at random if you get this one right. Leading up to the invasion of Normandy, so we're talking World War II, Allied intelligence needed to gather information about the beaches of Normandy. Which one of these unusual techniques did they use for this? Was it A, they created an entire fake German division to travel to the area and take photos? B, they created a photo contest asking civilians to send in their beach vacation photos? Or C, they tunneled underground for 60 kilometers in order to secretly map out the region?
So the first one sounds like something that the Army would come up with, because it's like completely, all of them sound like something the Army would come up with because they're completely out of their minds. But for whatever reason, B sounds like something that they would have done in olden times and it would have worked. So I'm going to go with B.
The answer, Jay, is B. You got this one right. It is B.
I'm the champion.
And I found this fascinating because I love reading books about World War II and watching the documentaries and all that. I had never heard this story. So yeah, and this was 2 years before. So this is before they even really started planning Operation Overlord. They went on BBC and said, hey, we're going to do a photo contest. Send us your beach vacation photos of Europe between the northwest coast of France to basically to Norway. And what they were doing was collecting intel from the public in doing this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a good idea.
They got like 10 million photos.
That's like the TikTok of 1945.
That's exactly right. Like, when Russia invaded Crimea, stupid Russian soldiers were posting videos and not turning their location services off. And that's how the Ukraine army was targeting them.
Right.
So it's basically the same thing.
Right.
It's like, there's a lot of courses that modern day soldiers have to take to learn about, like, hey, don't take photos with like smokestacks in the background. Don't take photos 100%. With recognizable mountains, because that is targetable information.
There are those guys online that like make a living as influencers just by like, hey, show me your picture and I'll tell you where that picture was taken.
I love that stuff.
And it's fantastic. It's so fun to watch, but like the fact that it takes a lot of times like less than 20 minutes, like when they say, oh yeah, no, I just looked at this, and this, and here's where you were. It's like anything that goes online will one day be used by the AI robot monsters to come and take us down.
Yeah, it's super scary. There's one guy, so I play GeoGuessr a lot online, and there's this guy Geraint Bolt who is a very famous geoguesser, like Twitch streamer, and he does that. Like he can look at the dirt from a single picture and tell you what part of what country it's in. It's really impressive. And I've gotten to the point now where I can tell you just based on the roads, like what part of the world you're in. And a lot of time I can tell you what country you're in just based on the way the road looks, just from having played that game. But yeah, there's people that are like, find me. And it'll be a picture of them in a parking lot. It's like a Walmart parking lot. And they'll be like, oh, that's store number 124. You're in the third spot from the third row on the left. All right. Tell me a page number between 1 and 500, and I'll find you a joke.
492. And by the way, I have a fact when you're ready.
Oh, good. Okay. 492. These are the topic is women, so these are all incredibly sexist. Let me find one. A good woman is like a good bar. Oh, nope, can't read that one. Why did God create women? Because after one look at Adam, he realized man was going to need some help. That one's okay. That's non-misogynist. The rest of them incredibly misogynist. Yeah. All right, let's get back to our fact. What do you got?
Okay, so something I saw on TikTok that made me think of it was that when they were designing the space shuttle, they were doing it in Florida. This is the original space shuttle in the 70s. And it kept messing up, and they didn't know why it was messing up. And they realized it was because the climate didn't stay stable in Florida. It would go up and down, hot, cold, and everything would expand and contract during the manufacturing process. So they shift the manufacturing to Utah because the climate's stable. But because of that, they had to redesign some of the parts to fit on the train, because most trains are about 8 feet and a little bit of change wide. Okay. And when they go through, 4 feet and a little bit of change. I think it's 4 feet and 1/2 inch wide. And some of the tunnels that the train goes through don't quite they don't have a lot of give, so you have to redesign parts of the shuttle to do that. And that's the reason why they did that, was because the train tracks were built by British people, and British people built it to their standard. And the reason why they built it to their standard was because the roads, all the carriages had to be that far apart. Well, why did the carriages have to be all that far apart? Because there was ruts in the road that the carriages would have to fit. Well, why did it have to do that? Well, it goes all the way back to the Romans, who built all of the roads. And the reason why they made it 4 feet and a little bit of change was because the width of a horse is about 2 feet. 2 feet, 2 feet and a little bit of change. Their chariots were 2x2. So the space shuttle had to be designed around Roman parameters because of the great chain of causality from the Romans to the 70s. And that is a fact.
I love this podcast. That is amazing. I love hearing stuff like that. And you just went through it so succinctly. That's incredible. That's like we're only 2 or 3 steps removed from 2,000 years ago. It's
right. And decisions that the Romans made, depending on the size of a horse's butt, changed the way we built the space shuttle when we sent that up. So it's kind of the space race connected to the Romans. So
I was in Pompeii, and in Pompeii they have, the roads still have ruts in them from the wagon wheels.
Yeah, and that's what they were talking about.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like, this is 2,000 years old what I'm standing on right now.
And if you measure it, it's going to be the exact same width as the standard American railroad.
That's amazing. Holy cow. You win that one. I had never heard that. Okay, for the next question, we're playing for you to, when do you perform on the ship?
I'm done. So I'm in vacation mode until the
That's
week.
Amazing. That's my favorite way to I love the cruise work. I love it after the show. It's so much fun after the show. Before the show, I hate it. It's so hard to sit and wait.
It's very pensive, yes.
Yeah. So the next time that you're on stage, you've got to drop the word Normandy somehow into your set.
Sure, done.
Easy. If you get this one wrong. So which Allied general was appointed as the supreme commander on the D-Day invasion? Was it A, General Bernard Montgomery, B is General Dwight D. Eisenhower, or C is General George S. Patton?
So, I know that Eisenhower was the supreme commander all the way through. So I don't know if that's a trick question, that the day of Normandy. Patton wasn't there. He was in the South marching up, I believe. So I'm gonna just go with my gut and say Eisenhower, B.
That is correct. It is B, not a trick question. Dwight D. Eisenhower, yeah, and if you watch the Band of Brothers series, which is fantastic,
Sure, yeah.
they started out by reading a letter that Eisenhower wrote to the troops for them to all hear on D-Day. And I was recently, earlier last year, I was on the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, and they have a museum on the ship, and they had a copy of that actual letter, like one of the original 1944 letters. And I was reading it, and I was like, I was hearing the Band of Brothers music in the background as I was reading it. It was really incredible. But yep, Dwight D. Eisenhower is the one, so you don't have to drop Normandy in. But if you do, get a video of it, and we'll listen to it anyway.
I might do it anyway because I like saying fun words.
Speaking of videos, tonight we're on a hard out here in about 10 or 15 minutes because the Buckeyes are playing Texas tonight in order to try to make it to the national championship game. And you recently had someone from Ohio in your audience. Yeah. Let's take a listen to what happened when you asked them where they were from.
Here from Cleveland. Did someone just say hey? O-H? Oh, Ohio. Okay. Nobody needs to tell me what state they're from anymore, all right? Especially if you're going to use the abbreviation. I guess that's a thing in Ohio. Somebody goes OH and somebody goes IO because they're all impressed that they can spell the word. Is that what happens? Oh, wait. I don't know this one. I don't know. I didn't pay attention in Ohio class.
So that's just what you just make fun of Ohio. That's just what you do.
Well, so I was only vaguely aware of this idea that you say OH and then IO.
Yeah.
And I was on stage, you know how you're kind of piecing it through. And it was just like, are you guys just impressed you can spell it? Like, what's the big deal here? So yeah, I guess you can only do it in I guess Iowa can do it. And Ohio, and that's it. It'd be hard if I was like NE, and then somebody else had to say WJERSEY. Like it's not the same thing.
There you go. That's something to add on next time. So I used to play in the marching band at Ohio State, and the OHIO thing got to be so repetitive and so, I don't want to say annoying because it's just really a way of life here if you're a Buckeye fan. But I refuse to do it as like an adult.
Sure.
And
I agree.
It really makes people irrationally angry if you do not do it back. If they know that you're a Buckeye fan especially and you don't do it back, they get so mad.
Here's what a dork I am. In my brain, when I see OHIO, I think that's what you would say if you traveled to a moon of Jupiter. You'd go, oh, Io. Like that's my first thought because Io is a moon of Jupiter.
Incredibly nerdy reference, but
yeah, no, I just regained my virginity saying that to you.
Well, that's how they named Ohio. Actually, it was some guy that thought that it looked like the moon of Jupiter back in 1803.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah, it's
a Native American thing, I think. So for the third question, we're going to play for a sticker. It's orange, it's 3 inches square, and it's sticky. And I'm sure by now you are owed a collection of these. What was the name of the airborne division that parachuted into Normandy before the beach landings? Was it A, the 82nd Airborne, B, the 101st Airborne Division, or C, the 13th Airborne Division?
I wouldn't have named it the 13th. Bad luck, Michael Kent. You don't do that. So I've just heard the 82nd Airborne Division used in jokes a lot, which makes me think that it's like, who are you going to call in the 82nd Airborne Division? So it makes me think that maybe through cultural osmosis, it came through. So I'm going to say A, 82nd.
The answer, B, the 101st. The 101st. You were doing so well.
I'm going to flip this desk over. Oh, it's attached to the wall. I can't.
Yeah, don't do that. And the walls in those rooms are paper thin. Paper thin and metal. One of my friend Bill Cook, who's done a lot of cruise ship magic shows, turned me on to these metal or these magnet hooks. Do you have any of those? Oh, I use them. I don't, so but I know. They're really great for the insides of cruise ship rooms because they stick to everything in the room. And I'll hang my hat on them and my jacket on them. And They're great.
And in case you get a head injury, you can do an at-home MRI real quick if you need to, if you have enough of them.
Quickly. Yeah. They're also great for erasing the hard drive on your computer when you're traveling.
That's right. Well, sometimes you might need to do that. If you travel a long time, there's some stuff your wife should not be privy to when you're coming back.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a long time to get through the Panama Canal. You got to do something to entertain yourself.
Very long time. We're all but men of flesh, Michael.
So no sticker for you. Question 4, we're playing for a souvenir from your ship. If you get it wrong, you got to find me a souvenir. It does not have to be from the shop. It can literally be anything you can find. In your room, I don't care.
Excuse me. Sorry, Mike.
No worries.
Thank you.
Which technology was used by the Allies to intercept and decode German communications during D-Day? Was it A, radio signals, B, the Enigma machine, or C, cipher disks?
So, well, I mean, the Enigma machine I knew, which was designed by Alan Turing. Among many of the many incredible things that he came up with. So, I mean, this is kind of a hard question because they were intercepting radio, but they were using the Enigma machine to figure out what they were saying. So I'm going to go B, Enigma machine.
You are correct, and yeah, that is kind of my choices were poor because I don't know what a cipher disk is, but right. they were intercepting radio signals and decrypting them with the Enigma. So yeah, like basically Bletchley Park was where like kind of MI6 was headquartered, and the Allied cryptographers there successfully intercepted and decoded many of these messages. This was crucial information for D-Day. Basically told them, hey, there's not a lot of Germans in this area. Let's do it.
Right.
So,
and it's such a shame what happened to Alan Turing, one of the great patriots of this or England or any country, who just happened to be homosexual at a time when you couldn't have been homosexual, and because of that, his greatness was not seen the way it should have been seen. So it's a shame that this genius who helped win the war was persecuted by his own people, which is just not fair.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. It's horrible. He missed the window of time in which it was acceptable to be, in that line of work, which I think is probably snapping shut sometime around now. Unfortunately,
let's hope you're wrong.
Yeah, let's do. Number 5 is for all the marbles, Jay. If you get it right, you're welcome back on the podcast anytime. And some marbles, I guess. If you get it wrong, banned for life. No more of these Starlink meetups that we keep doing. Here is your question. Yeah. Now, I know that you're there for work, and sometimes, like you said, you're kind of there against your will, but this is a job. But that said, of all the places that you've traveled, which has been the most beautiful destination?
So I have been to many places over the course of my cruise career. I have seen the black stone of Iceland, which was absolutely gorgeous. I've seen Hawaii just recently, which was absolutely stunning. But I'm going to go with London. And really? I know it's a kind of urban beauty because it doesn't match up with the pure nature, natural beauty of Iceland and Hawaii. But I think part of the reason I loved it so much is I always wanted to go to London, and I just love the vibe with the eye and all of the weirdly shaped buildings that are there for no discernible reason, and the beautiful architecture of all the buildings that are older than our entire country. It's just it was just stunning to me. So I'm going to say London for sure.
London is a correct answer. Not that I would know.
Oh,
I've never been
goodness.
there. I've never been. I would love to go to London, but I've never been to London. And I've only been to like Southern Europe. Never been to the UK at all. But that's awesome.
You got to get there. I'm sure you will if you're doing cruises. They'll get.
I will.
There
yeah,
eventually.
I'm pretty early in my cruise career at this point. So
yeah.
But man, thank you so much for making the time for me today.
No
I really
problem.
appreciate it, and I know that it's hard sometimes to sneak away when you're on a ship, but we're really lucky that we can do this in this day and age because only probably 4 or 5 years ago, we would not have been able to talk while you were sailing and I was at home.
I can tell you, this being as clear as it is,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's kind of stunning that I am like somewhere in the Atlantic right now, and I get to talk to you. So I'm pleased that I'm able to do that. Disappointed that we have to pay Elon to do it, but,
Yep, but
and
it's not
it's
bad.
a good product.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to see maybe if Jay Black's going to be on a future cruise ship of yours, or if you just want to see him catch comedy or you catch him doing comedy whenever he's doing clubs or whatever around the East Coast or anywhere in the country, go to JayBlack, JayBlack.tv. And when you do that, his schedule's up there. You can learn how to see Jay Black and check his videos and stuff out too. Add him on YouTube and Instagram, because the TikTok's going away in a week, it looks like.
Is it? Did they? I missed it. Did they say that it's going away?
No, they didn't say, but I listened to the. So we're recording this on Friday, the 10th of January, and the Supreme Court basically talked about this today, and I listened to the entire thing, and it sounds like they're going to uphold the ban. It did not sound positive for TikTok, and but whatever.
I knew it was going to happen. You know why, Mike?
Why is that?
Because I was just monetized on TikTok, so
Yep.
it makes sense that it's going away at the exact moment I can make some money off of it.
I've got like 45,000 followers on there, and nowhere else can I get that number of followers.
It's just I want to punch myself in the face repeatedly, but maybe Mark Cuban will buy it, or maybe you and me can buy it, Mike. Let's
band our money together and offer them $27.32. See what they say.
Well, hold on, I'm not made of money, pal. Let's
maybe after the next cruise. All right, dude.
Yeah,
well,
thank
you so much for joining me, and I appreciate having you on.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.
That's all for this week. Thank you so much to Jay Black for being my guest, and thanks to you for listening. Here's the voice of a kid whose great-great-granddaddy took a picture of his grandma, sent it to the BBC.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endres, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.